Hi, and welcome to the first quarter briefing for the American Future Project. Just a quick reminder about the impetus for this project is there are a lot of narrative building efforts happening out there around the world right now, and they are primarily centered in institutions and the academies and with the creative or coastal elite sometimes to craft a narrative of what America in our next 250 years is going to look like. One of the things that I noticed was missing was the voice and desires for a preferred future from everyday Americans. This project aims to fill that gap and catalyze imagination among everyday Americans to participate then in creating and co-creating their shared future. So to get started today, just a quick recap of where we are. Here we are in early 2024. We're hearing cries about the end of democracy in this election year. We have states and the federal government not the states that are actually trying to take power from the federal government and then using the courts, as we know, especially the Supreme Court right now, to try and decide, if you will, what happens. We're hearing cries of a potential civil war again. There's heightened fears of authoritarianism, and our institutions continue to lose public trust. So this project, given that state of the union and where we are, the American Future Project is really for people who are feeling aggrieved, enraged, hopeless, or even resigned about where the United States is headed. They may have tuned out of civic life thinking that they can't really, that they don't matter, their opinion doesn't matter, they can't make an impact. And they are also willing to spend time thinking about what they want for their own future that feels a little bit more in their control. So that's who this project is for and where we're starting from. We do know most Americans have a can-do spirit, but so many folks these days have stopped watching news because there's actually not much meaningful information there. There's a new, a new interest, if you will, in escapism or stories about surviving the post-apocalypse times. This is good for preparedness, but it also means we're programming our brains for an end times story. There's a lot of folks right now who may feel like they have a good life and the opportunity to thrive, but we can see visibly on the streets of our cities people who do not. And there's also an increase, or at least an increased awareness of people who are suffering from chronic conditions and experiencing severe health challenges right now. And I'm also finding in my personal life, there's um, extra cancer, extra death as we head into this very challenging year of 2024. And then people are really starting to feel the effects of extreme weather events as they increase in our kind of day-to-day life. And of course, the weather is being reported in a very hyperbolic way as well. So that gets us to this thesis of what the American Future Project is all about, because I think we need to believe and imagine. Let me start that one again. Americans actually need to imagine first and then believe in a future that doesn't suck and something that's actually worth sacrificing now to get to this preferred future. So that's the thesis that has been adapted a little bit from where we started. This is a little bit about me. I am a social change agent. You can look at my LinkedIn profile to get the she's done what, where, and when. But the highlights are building coalitions of 600 organizations through the Bridge Alliance. I've also run for public office, owned a small marketing firm, had a coaching practice, and an automotive repair shop back in a previous life. So I have some credentials for startups. And I kind of feel like America's in a startup position right now because we have the poly crisis of our time and this crisis of imagination. To get out of it, we need something new. We need a startup, a start over, a renew the commitment of Americans to our founding principles. And part of why imagination is so important is because neuroscience is showing us, is proving to us that if we can spend even 5 minutes a day thinking with awe and wonder about a possible future, we will begin to create that vision as a new reality. And I don't know about you, but I would prefer to avoid the dystopian options. So my question here is, how might we then imagine our way into a better future? Phase one of the which was the coffee shop tour, our pilot project, is complete. We did complete 35 interviews. The participants were very diverse, and literally driving from Maryland to California and back, we were able to increase the diversity of the field of folks that we've interviewed. A total of 46 interviews have been done as of today's date, which is February 27th. One of the things that we did find in the pilot project is that people do know what they want for their future. uh, Everyone was able to sit down and readily like come up with a future vision that they preferred over the options that they're seeing available to them in the community right now. And this was the part that I did not expect, but I'm really glad was there. And that is, every person that I interviewed had some version of their preferred future with deeper connections that were with their families and people near where they lived. Everyone preferred to live in a community where they could feel like they belong and yet be themselves at the same time. And every one of them also wanted a way to contribute back to those people around them and in their community. So this was like, to me, I call this the three C's. And this was the big finding, if you will, for the pilot project. So the three C's, as I mentioned, a community, connection, and contribution. And the thing that we end the interview in, it's an 8-question interview, was getting back to like, what does the community that supports your preferred future have to include for you to be able to have your future? And this was starting to build in a story, or dropping seeds, if you will, into people's minds about the interdependence, interconnectedness of themselves and their community. So phase one, learning, our project learning, a little bit about process, updated the questions a few times. The affinity groups, that we had actually initially thought was going to be in phase three. And we're now moving it up into phase two for pre-election use. So affinity groups are like faith communities, book clubs, families, et cetera, using the interview, if you will, to help them have those pre-election conversations to help in their choosing, if you will, of candidates who might be more willing to support the communities that they're going to need for preferred futures to be possible. The other thing we discovered is that the processing of live interviews takes hours to do, to get them into a ready to publish format or ready to stream format. So the editing process itself, we're looking to see if we can automate that. The participant learning, and what would be worth wading through the crap, as I've said in previous editions, is they really are learning or knowing that they need to be curious and open-minded and kind. That's, everyone wanted to be near people who were curious, open-minded, and kind, and so they need to do it themselves. Everyone had some version of living near their daily needs with easy access to transportation. So either being able to walk with ease to do shopping and entertainment, or having it public transportation easily available to do so. Everyone talked about having an agency to like live their preferred life. And of course, this includes a lot of human dignity, no matter their age or health inclinations, et cetera. And everyone wanted to give back to others. It's that part of feeling valued that was really mind opening, if you will, in the pilot. So that kind of sets us up for getting ready for phase two. And in phase two, we need to finalize and create an interview into like a downloadable and shareable format. We have an online Google form right now where people can do a self-interview. But we'd like to have a portal where people could answer the questions on video or audio or written, and then have that be added into the database. And then we also need to expand the research pool to include, 2,000 people that are broadly representative of the American public. And we want to experiment with some place-based groups. We're looking at Florida and Pennsylvania, and Michigan just popped up on the radar recently too. So, and then we need help doing affinity outreach. As I mentioned before, affinity groups are faith communities, book clubs, families, et cetera, where people gather around non-political things, those are perfect affinity groups to have this interview conversation. Also in phase two, we need to identify partners that we could work with. One of the ideas we're bouncing around is maybe identifying the counties, the swing counties, or the counties that are most at risk for political violence in this election year, using the interview as a way to build a strong, interconnected foundation to help diminish the possibility of violence. So this could be, adjacent to some grassroots work that's already in place, or some issue-based work. And then bridging and reforms organizations that may have this capacity might be a good candidate for this. We need to explore that further. We need to set up the research database. I'm actually working with two volunteers, young people right now, who are looking at how do we collect the stories from the participants, setting up that media portal, if you will. And then how do we, once we have the information, the stories, the dreams, the visions, how do we make that available to researchers and storytellers and artists who actually want to use the information that we've collected to create positive future stories? And we're talking to several artists about that as well. Once we get towards the end of phase two, we're going to need to start sharing the stories widely. The distribution channels we have right now are through a little bit through social media, but we need to find a way to get it out there more broadly. The Terrified Nation podcast is a different approach with including the same content, but it's really targeted for folks who are more fear motivated rather than inspired to act. And so additional needs for sharing these stories, including, a scheduler for the podcast, referrals, research for database funding, et cetera, so we can get these stories out there. Just a reminder, we're in phase two of 5. Phase 3 will be post-election, where we do some more narrative sense making. Phases 4 and 5 include a documentary production, writing a book, and then release and celebration during the 2026 250th anniversary of our nation. So here's just a brief look at what type of partners we think we're going to need for each phase as we go through it. And I really hope to hear from you soon. So please be in touch. Have a good day.